Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Kirkpatrick.
And my name is Ty Whitman.
And we're the hosts of the Beyond the Narthex podcast.
A show where we sit down with members of CK Press and go beyond our narthex and take a deeper dive into the lives of our church family.
Our hope is that each episode will cultivate and encourage new conversations for you, our listeners, with our guests.
Enjoy the episode.
Well,
Sure.
should we just introduce
Yep.
her? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're here with Mary Eyer, and we just would love to ask if there's something specific, unique that you'd like to share that the church may not know about you at this point.
Well, the thing that's going on in my life now that I no longer drive school buses, of course, but is when I retired, I had the opportunity to return to a passion of mine, which was riding horses. And it has just been really wonderful. They talk about when you get old, your brain doesn't age. Your brain thinks you're really young.
Yeah.
And your body says otherwise. And this is a perfect exercise in learning that concept.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can do that. I did that back when I was a teenager and in my 20s. I was, and now I'm riding a different style. I'm learning how to ride dressage, which is not something I did before. It's kind of, it's very basic, but it's the basics. It's like what the Lipizans do in Austria. The gaits are very measured and the movements are very measured, and it's a very athletic kind of riding. You do patterns and you compete mostly against yourself.
Okay.
It's all scored and that sort of thing, and each level you go to advances your skills and the horse's skills. So it's been a real challenge, but it's been beautiful.
Oh,
I would
just to
be
be
happy
back
to
with
go
them.
out and just groom horses, but
just smell them, right?
yes, exactly.
I feel like because I think I've shared before,
Yeah.
my mom grew up with horses too, so it's just always fun to talk to people who love horses, and they're like, I'd be perfectly content mucking stalls and just smelling them, brushing them.
Absolutely.
And it goes deep. That's you,
It does.
huh?
I was born that way. So
Aw.
the earliest memories as a kid was
With your horses?
horses. Yeah, I didn't have horses till I was 12 or so. But the first thing I drew, all my toys, the books. I had all the books. But anyway,
That's
so
great.
it's
Yeah.
been good.
That's really good. Is it a certain type of horse that you need for dressage, or?
There
Yeah, 'cause I
are multiple types of horses, from draft horses to off the track thoroughbreds. Do dressage.
Meaning retired off the track?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The horse I'm riding is a Hanoverian. It's a German show horse. Dressage was originally, they trained the horses for war. And so everything, if you think about it, you're riding a horse and you're trying to shoot bows and arrows or lance or whatever you're doing in war. You have to be very
Level.
controlled. You can't be, side to side and up and down. And that's where the discipline started. So it's a very European style of riding, but that's where the heavy horses, the draft horses and cobs and that sort of thing come in, because they were the first ones to do it.
And then it continues, that art form, even though it's not as necessary. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So how often do you go?
I ride 3 times a week, and then I do shows on weekends, maybe once a month or so. Not quite that often this summer, but
Where is this at?
I am riding with my husband, Larry. His cousin's wife has 2 horses.
Oh, nice.
And she rides the one that's a high level dressage horse, a newer, younger animal. And I ride her old Hanoverian mare who's 24.
Oh.
And she knows more than I do, so it's fun.
That's fun. Wow.
And I rode this morning. That's why we're doing this in
I
the
love
afternoon.
it. Yes.
That's great.
It's very accommodating. It's a busy Monday for you.
Yeah.
So,
Something at Miracle Ranch, the camp. When we do our winter camp every year, well, this is now the third year we just did it, but so that you can actually ride the horses there.
right.
Which the people of both genders love it, but the girls go crazy for it. But one of the things that they do is during our breakout sessions, almost every year they have somebody there that does a breakout session on horses and their faith. Now they kind of cheat a little bit by telling the girls that they might get to pet the horse, and so of course everybody goes
signs up.
Yes.
But it's a really unique. I've never actually sat through it, but a few of the people that have gone have said it's a relatively interesting and unique breakout session about this idea about trust and how actually the trust goes both ways, and you can actually look at it from two different lenses. In our faith with God, but like how the horse needs to trust you,
Right.
that you are leading it well, but you also need to trust the horse, that the horse is going to actually do what it needs to do and that kind of thing. But the horse trusts you because they can't see this way, right? They can only really see ahead of themselves, and so you need to warn them off from danger. And,
Right.
And so they kind of talk about how that plays a role in our faith and how we can trust God and that kind of thing. Have you, in your time with horses, have you felt like there's any kind of faith ties for you? Or spiritual ties, moments?
Absolutely spiritual.
Yeah.
It's tied in a lot to the miracle of creation. In my heart and my soul, I have connected to horses always, even before I understood God or that there was a God. I wasn't raised Christian, and you just connect at a different level, and it's similar to when you go out in the backcountry, and which is another thing I've done a lot of. I used to work for the Park Service, so. One of those many other jobs, and you just connect. You look at that, and you know that this couldn't be without the miracle of a God, a loving God that is creative and connects everything. It's a connection that you have when you're a horse person, just like a dog person, or I guess there's cat people too, but
For sure. I love
anyway.
it. It's true, and it's so relational.
Absolutely.
I was never a rider, but when I volunteered for a time, just mucking stalls, like we were talking about, and just being around them, you do get the sense of they trust you. They know, like, you're in their enclosure with them, like brushing them, grooming them, and I mean, horse therapy or equine therapy, and like Ty was talking about with the faith connection, it just seems like that is an animal there's a relationship that needs to be built for sure.
And that is so God.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes the difference between faith and religion. Actually, is the relationship. And when, or at least as my faith has developed over the years, that's the part that is the aha and the eye-opening thing, is that wherever and whenever I am able to be deep in a connection with God, that's what it's about. It's about the relationship. It's fun to learn, the religiosity stuff and theology stuff. I really find it fascinating. And the history of the church, but it's the relationship that Jesus came for. And that's, so yes.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it is. I mean, it is one of those things where you really, like you said, the miracle of creation and the fact that, Danny talked about this on our children's message, right? That we're made in the image of God.
Right.
And one of those things that we have is the capacity to creativity, but the other thing that we have the capacity towards, and actually the proclivity towards, is relationships. and you do kind of have these strange relationships with nature and animals that doesn't seem to, it's not the same as a human connection.
Right.
But like I look into my dog's eyes and I go, you understand me in a way that it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And there's joy that can be found and had here.
And it's really so much deeper than just a reactionary response to your stimuli or your your surroundings. That's the God in it. So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, the God in it for sure. So you said, I mean, you have a lot of vocational, I don't know if you would call them all vocation or not, but all this professional experience. And so if you weren't a Christian early on, I mean, I don't know how I want to frame this question. So where have been those intersections then with your professional work, whether it be Park Service, working as a nurse, like, where have you started to see that intersect or speak to anything?
So I have always, when I was a kid, kids want to grow up to be firemen or astronauts or whatever. I wanted to grow up to be work for the Peace Corps. So I always, from the time I was little bitty, I wanted to do things for other people. So, and that was fostered in my family. We did a lot of service work. My mom was a nurse. I was never going to be a nurse because I saw what she went through. And but I have volunteered since I was a child. I mean, at various things. And so that piece of it is part of the way I was made, I guess. And I had a pretty wild teenagerhood, and ended up out here in Washington, and decided I needed to do something different with my life. I had done so many other jobs, like we were speaking of before, tons of things. So I felt honored to be able to live here. I had lived on the East Coast and all through the Midwest and Colorado and this sort of thing. And I had never seen any place like Washington. It was just so beautiful. And I've always, even then I called it God's country, and there was no God in my life that I knew or recognized. And I felt I had to give back to the state for letting me be here, for letting me wake up and look at this every day. And so I thought, well, I probably should go to nursing school then, because it would be something fairly easy. I had worked in a nursing home, and I actually had certification for that, which they didn't have in Washington State when I came here. Okay. They didn't have certified nurse aides. And in Iowa, where I came from, I could pass medications. I had done all this training and all this stuff. So when I moved out to Port Angeles to establish residency, I started working in a nursing home for a short time, and then got on with the Park Service, which was much better. I led snowshoe walks up on Hurricane Ridge and took school kids on hikes through the woods, and that naturalist stuff. Did weather reports and research for the people who gave the talks and that sort of thing. So that was, I really got to know the outdoors then. And then went to nursing school in Port Angeles, and much to my surprise, I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the chemistry. My dad was a chemistry professor. And I never had taken a chemistry class. Oh, wow. And I thought, this is so cool. And that, I think, was the start of me understanding that there was a being that was God, that this couldn't be chance. Yeah. It was
so
design.
Complex. Yeah.
Right. And getting down to the molecular level of things that were happening, and it was like I knew I was meant to do this, and it just took off. I loved it. I loved it. I had the best career. I spent 30 years as a registered nurse before I went back to get my nurse practitioner. And I did that so I could better serve, and God was part of all of that. All of that. It was just, and the farther I got into it, the more it was relational again. The part of it I loved was the relationship with patients, the one-on-one stuff. The science is very stimulating, but the thing that's wonderful about it is the relationship, and that's all I miss. So
Yeah. Oh man, your eyes, the camera can't see that, but your eyes do light up when we're talking about.
It was wonderful.
I love that. And it's like this unveiling. I mean, you were talking about the apocalyptic a couple sermons ago.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, what does that stand for? It's actually like unveiling.
Unveiling, yeah.
Revealing.
Yeah.
And it's just like you're unveiling like about God through understanding
Absolutely.
human beings at the scientific level. And it's pretty raw and just right there in front of you. So.
It is. And the more again, it's a complementary thing with the intellectual and the relationship, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So when did that relationship become like a reality for you? Because you said it kind of started to percolate in your mind, and but yeah, when was that? Like, not only did you start to go, there is a God, but like this is
right.
Now I have a real relationship with this.
So. When I was a child, we went to a Unitarian fellowship for a while in one of the college towns we lived in, and learned about other religions. That's what pretty much all we did. And that was very interesting. And when I moved to Bremerton, I was doing all this volunteer stuff. I started a women's vote project. I worked at the Pregnancy Crisis Center. I did food bank stuff. Just all and I just was missing something. I worked in ICU. I was doing volunteer stuff at the hospital. And there was just this big hole in my life, and I was looking for what was supposed to fill it. And it's also how I met Larry. I rented his cabin that's in our backyard from him. And when I moved to Bremerton, and he said to me, "You should come to church sometime." I go, at this 11 o'clock service. Well, I work nights. I got off at 7, and that's like getting up in the middle of the night to go somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Not going to happen. But I decided I tried the Unitarian church, and that wasn't it. And so one morning when I got off work on time, I went over to an 8 o'clock service, and I walked in, and I swear to you, Jesus hit me over the head because I didn't know what I was looking for, just something else to fill me. And it was the first awareness I ever had of Jesus Christ, of a Christ. And the sermon was... actually, I remember it. It was directed to the mountaintops and the valleys of faith. And I thought, well, that wasn't the stereotype of the Christian people that I had grown up with coming from college campuses, or, the people I had run across before. It was a message from God, and it was about Christ, and it was the first time I ever felt him, and that it filled the hole. It really did. It was just amazing, and it was this is it.
Wow.
So
that's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Gosh, to be able to point to that.
Yeah. It was pretty outstanding.
Did you continue going back to that church?
Yeah,
too?
I did. And they had 2 services there. They had an 8 o'clock and an 11 o'clock. And Larry always went to the 11:30, he said, because he never could get up on time. He was always late and went to the second service. But I started going to the first service, and it turned out that the director of nursing at the hospital, who had hired me into ICU there, also went to that church. And so that was another connection. And I thought, oh, this is a connection. This is a connection. It wasn't long after I started going to church that I had a patient ask me if I would pray with them, and that had never happened.
So all of a sudden there was kind of this pointing to God. Wow.
And it was very clear that the reason I survived as long as I did was because God had something for me. And it was that relationship, meeting him.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's awesome.
Gosh.
I love hearing those stories.
Something like tangible like that.
It really...
Well, and you were going throughout life. I mean, it didn't sound like you were making use of yourself and your time. So it didn't sound like you were just sitting idly by, like, twiddling your thumbs, what's missing? You're very active and relational already, but yet you still felt that there was this need for more. Or
Absolutely.
a whole. I mean, did you feel the
a wholeness? That's it.
You said
that's
that was your word. Yeah.
It was my word. Good for me.
It was a good word, Mary.
That's what it is.
But what's interesting is when you do hear different stories, I mean, the whole language does come up. I keep thinking of like Danny and Marty Hole and their last names now too in the back of my mind. But and I wonder, so you experience this lack of, right? Yeah.
Right. It just... incomplete. And it was so clear to me that I had a really good childhood, just a really wonderful parents, and still have a wonderful mom, but I made a lot of really stupid choices, a whole lot of them, in my younger years. And it just, once I started listening, I guess, it was so clear to me that God had been there all along. Had got me out of all those bad choices alive, which is really amazing, for a reason. And so anyway, it's really been good, and it's been full of valleys and mountaintops and everything in between. So
literally too. Parks and Rec, Or not Parks and Rec, though.
Well, Parks and Rec, too.
Did you also work Parks and Rec?
No, I didn't, but...
all the above.
I know those people.
Oh, I bet.
That's a great first sermon to hear, because I think a lot of teenagers experience this, but people maybe, they get saved and they have this spiritual high and they're just so excited, and then 5 months later, like, their life gets rocked by something.
Right.
Something happens, and then they just start to kind of fizzle, and they still believe, but it's not like this fire's not burning within their soul. And so then they start to wonder, what do I do? Is everything okay? Should I go looking for something else? Where is God? Those kinds of things. But if you realize that actually your life, both in actual life and spiritual life, there are these great mountaintops where you look out and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, what could beat this? And then those valleys where you just kind of
have to do the next indicated thing, because there's no spark.
But God is present in all of it.
All of it.
And He is with you and upholding you. And so that's a really good that's a good way to kind of start that journey. Because as you go through those valleys, I already heard this sermon, I know this.
Right.
I can make it through.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good for youth too. I feel like, you say made a lot of mistakes, don't we all, right? But I appreciate you being transparent for listeners, for us too. And I just think of the youth that I know in my life, and just where it's like, well, not only youth, I suppose anyone younger than me could be a youth now. In my head, I still think I'm a certain age too, so is this just going to continue, right? Where I'm like, I'm this age, and I'm aging outside, but not inside.
25.
That's the age for you. Yeah, I have 22 in my head. Maybe that's Taylor Swift.
I was
Maybe, yeah.
Thinking of the song. What were you saying?
actually, my first thought is always 22, and then I think, oh no, I remember 22. I still had
You still haven't gotten
You
there
can
yet.
still
no.
But so when you recognize when Jesus thumped you on the head, you're like, okay, this is now me. Like, was there any shame tied with, the sins from the past?
Oh,
I know the sins
absolutely.
continue, but that didn't stop you, right? That wasn't a hold up, or
I think my early years of faith, there was, felt it was work. I had so much work to do.
and that was motivating.
Right, most of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's enough to sink you, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's very motivating. And I had a pastor once who had just come for a visit. We were sitting out on the deck of my little cabin and talking about, how I was growing in faith. And at one point he said to me, so let me get this straight, Mary. You think your sins are so great that Jesus Christ himself is not able to forgive you? Wow. You're really something.
You turned that around. Yeah.
And it was another 2x4. I've needed a lot of 2x4s in my life. And oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same pastor at another point in my life, during marriage counseling, said, I thought out of the blue, well, so Mary, what are you going to do in this relationship about your martyrdom complex? Wow, I'm just so transparent, aren't I? I can take it.
Yeah.
So, and some of the things that were, I guess, most impactful on my life for 40 years now, 50 years, have come from those rough steps
Yeah.
of growth, in faith.
Yeah.
And so.
And rarely a time in the rough steps, I doubt you're thinking that this is fruitful, right? It's an
No,
insider.
actually, I get to I've been at the bottom before, even after coming to Christ. I've hit bottom several times.
Yeah.
And thinking, I just can't do this. But at some point, someone else, God puts someone else in my life, or else God comes to me directly and says, you're right, you can't do it, but we can do it. And every time. Yeah. And it's just really, it's been a matter of listening, I guess. And, I spend too much time in my head, I get in a bad place. And I have to be listening for God and looking for God. It's got to be an active relationship.
Yeah.
Relationships don't do well, like you're saying, you with kids particularly. And because they haven't had enough chances, I think, to see that there is more, and God is there.
Right.
They haven't been on the other side enough times.
Yeah.
To
there's definitely some biblical. There's a lot of biblical truth there in the fact that just like as you live life, and you look back on your life and you can see all the ups and downs, and you can see all the ways that God brought you up. It doesn't make, if you are in a difficult spot at 70 or 80 or whatever, it doesn't make it any easier necessarily, but you expect the reprieve to come at some point.
And you have a little more strength, I think,
you do.
to hold on.
Totally. Yeah, hold on.
Until it comes, because it's coming. And
and whereas when you're younger, if you have, like you said, if you haven't come over that hurdle enough times or climbed back up to the mountaintop and had those experiences, then it can be really hard in the valleys. and you see that too, as like with the Israelites during in the Old Testament. Actually, as they get, I mean, they don't seem to get a whole lot better over the course of their history. But they
that
seem
was
to.
40 years.
That's true.
You know, you got to give them some credit.
Give them some credit, yeah.
Yeah.
But eventually, towards the end of the Old Testament, they start to actually, they have a lot more memories of like, okay, God has done this, and He's done this, and He's done this, and He's done this. So maybe He'll do it now too.
Yeah. A little more hope.
A little bit more hope.
Yeah.
And so there's something really, really great about that. Expect to be able to look back and see, oh yeah, God was here there.
Right. Exactly.
And even if I didn't know it, like, because I came to faith when I was 19, and so I can look back at my life. I mean, even that was it wasn't really all that long of a time, but it was a majority of my life without knowing Christ. But I can still look back and go, yeah, Christ was there, even though I didn't recognize Him or know Him in that season.
Right.
He was pushing me. He was either pulling me towards Himself or upholding me in a way that I...
Yeah, that old poem, that Footprints poem, you know, it is... Actually, it's truth. The first time I read that, I thought, you know, that this is truth. That there's so many times before you come to really know in your soul that there's God. That's how it's done. That's how He gets you where you need to be.
Yeah. And even then, there's these doubts that creep in. And it's like you mentioned the other people. I feel like, okay, well, then there's your validation for community. Because then they can be the ones that are like either pointing out those moments in your life, God was there, still here. Or else just, you know, we doubt or we struggle and we can still grow in it or be in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with that attitude of seeking, you know, and in education, lifelong learners are usually the most successful, are people that believe in lifelong learning. And I think God points us in the same way. That's why He gives us a Bible that every time we open it, we read something brand new. It's like, oh, I didn't read that last time I read through this book, you know? It just, it's, so many answers are there, and we just I need to be looking. Forget what the next question is.
I don't know. There's no such thing as next question.
No. Oh, good.
We just kind of go. One of the things that I'm wondering is, so you and Larry, I mean, we could, you guys, you find your way here at CK Press, and I feel like you guys, much actually like David and Stephanie Sweeney, and actually probably like a lot of the new members, get involved
launched in
very quickly. I mean, and then you started to feel maybe I could serve in other capacities. And I know somebody asked, maybe somebody asked if they could nominate you to be an elder, but I remember you came into my office and you were looking for books on what does it mean to be an elder?
Seeking.
And then you come back and you go, no, I'm meant to be a deacon after reading those books. So like, what is God doing in your life through that? Or like, why did you feel compelled to start to serve? Or what was going on there?
Yeah.
So the I guess the service field, again, that's me.
Yeah.
In most areas of my life, and for almost 40 years we've served in various capacities at church, and it's just that piece of it is kind of part of our life. And one of the things that this is another way that God works. Okay, so we have two children that are grown and in their mid-30s, and we had no grandchildren, and our oldest daughter said, not going to happen here. And our son and daughter-in-law said, well, whatever, they were teachers and busy, and so we had resigned ourselves that we would not have grandchildren, and that's fine. We got dogs, grand dogs, and grand pigeons, and grand cats, and so things were okay. So that's why when I started coming, when we opened up again, I started listening online. Because I had left our prior church over a year before Larry did, and then COVID. So I started listening online, and I was very much fed by the sermons that I heard, and it was just really exciting for me. And so then when I got here, what was missing in my life was the connection to kids. I do best. I mean, I've been Sunday school superintendent. I've started in kindergarten, and I did the troubled youth. I was a youth leader for, I've done all this stuff. And I just really needed to connect with kids. And the kids here are amazing. They are just so cool. I just feel so blessed to be able to work with the kids that I'm working with. It's just been great. But and then a year into it, God gives us a grandchild.
Wow.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so every time, and the same thing has gone historically for us with things like tithing. We've tithed for years, and somehow we're doing well. Even when things were so tight, it was always the first part of the budget. And in return, God has blessed us so much. I mean, we can travel now. I could retire when I was 64 instead of, wait until I was 80 or whatever, which I always thought I would have to work till I die. So many things in life God has given. You just take a couple steps and I'll give you so much more. So that's what's happened. And then when I was asked about this elder deacon thing, see, I was not in line when they gifted out administrative gifts.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't do that. I So anyway, that kind of surprised me, but it also said to me, okay, you're doing all the things you're comfortable with. We got the women's group working with Coffee Oasis a little bit, which is good. And because I was really tired of a lot, so a little bit was good. And so that thought was one of those things where here's this little nudge,
the nudges.
So there must be something much bigger. And just talking with you, Brittany, about the elder thing, when I realized
the elder versus deacon.
But talking to you about the deacon thing, I'm sorry, the terminology still escapes me, but and that was such a I guess flexible role, so much broader than I was expecting, just like God always does. Little bitty step forward and
that's so true. And then just boom, this explosion of
right. So I'm just really interested and excited about that piece. And
Have you felt like, so I mean, obviously you've done work that is service oriented. Did you were you one of those was that you kind of as a child too, where you just wanted to serve in different areas and like, Mom, I'll help you with the dishes, or maybe not. I mean, I don't know if kids ever are excited about doing the dishes.
Mom would probably say totally differently, but
for you felt that.
I felt that. And I always felt that's what we were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the things when I was in, it would have been probably second grade, I got a bicycle for Christmas. It was my first bicycle. I was really thrilled about it, and I rode it that year until that summer. And I was in a 4-H class with this with other little girls. I can't house. We were learning sewing and stuff like that in first grade, and
that's awesome.
The leader's daughter. It turned out her father lost his job, and I overheard that they weren't going to have Christmas that next year. So I went home and told Mom, I want to give my bike to Diane because she's not going to get a Christmas present otherwise. And so, they talked it over with me, and no, that's what I wanted to do. So they gave my bike to them, and I was very happy with that. But up here, the truth was, I thought I'd get another bike. I've never had another bike.
Oh, wow.
And they said, no, you gave your bike away.
So,
okay, so that's what giving is all about.
So not expect. Wow, that lesson landed.
Well, it was, and it was okay. I still don't, to this day, I can't ride bikes worth beans, but
you can ride a horse.
I can ride a horse.
There you go.
And it's a relationship.
The horse
the
is
bike,
a little
you're
cool.
like, no.
The horse is a little cool with that
It
bike.
is.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I could ride a horse. I think it'd be hard. But,
I tried to ride a bike in college
because
I didn't have a car the first couple of years, and there wasn't much of a public transport where I went to school in. And I hit 2 parked cars. I never damaged the cars, which I was very, very thankful for. And I had 2 bikes stolen. And it was like, I think I'm not supposed to ride bikes.
Again, you tried. You're putting yourself out there.
I did. But it wasn't going to work.
I really love, one of the things that I enjoy doing is listening to people talk about their childhoods. And kind of see this, if there are any through lines. Because really, I mean, as I look at like all the little kids that are here, I go, I bet you this is going to be who they are.
Projecting,
for 70 years. It may not always look like this, but they're always going to kind of be this kind of sweet, if they, like there are some kids who just, there was one kid in Sunday school whose sister was younger than he was, and he couldn't be in the same classroom as her, but he felt like he just couldn't do that, so he needed to be in the classroom with his sister. And I was like, he's going to be that way. Probably for the rest of his life.
He's going to be a shepherd. And
so to hear people and hear you kind of go back, like, you've always had this kind of servant heart, this kind of giving heart, and even though there's a chance that a lot of times the service you do or the giving you do makes it like you don't see anything from it,
right,
or any of the fruit. But you still have that kind of, it's just who God's made you to be, which is really cool.
And it is so cool to see that in kids. Isn't it? It just...
all their little personalities.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy that.
I do love hearing, I mean, again, not everyone is in tune with, I have a servant's heart. But clearly everyone is capable of serving in some capacities.
Right, of course,
And not that nobody was saying otherwise, but it's just so interesting because I feel like the language I hear often is just like, I just need to be filled. A lot of people need to be filled. So is it this recognition of there's a hole? Christians or non-Christians, like they're needing to be filled, and you understand that when you've reached depletion, you need to be filled with something. And yet it seems like, this analogy you have of like, there's this little hole, you poke through, and then God helps with flourishing, and there's like so much freedom in serving, in the same way that there's freedom with God's law, right? It's like the huge like paradox that we have of Christianity. And so like in serving and giving of your time and yourself, like there is just, I mean, clearly there's joy and freedom when that resonates with you as who God designed you to be. But I can't help but wonder and feel, and I don't want to just like project this onto a ton of people, but I just can't help but wonder and feel like if you are, the church, I heard someone say once, like, it seems like people kind of forget, like, the church is people, like, it's people serving, like, and you are the church, like, and so it just seems like if we are, I don't know what that looks like, but it just seems if you're serving, like, there's joy and freedom in that, and whatever that looks like, it doesn't have to be involved in all of these facets, but, and it's just nice that the servant heart in you is aligning with God's will in your life too, and there's joy in that, and that happens to be something beautiful, like for you, Mary, and I hope that for others too, like whatever service could look like,
I firmly believe this in my professional practice as well, that God, I did a Bible study once years ago in my women's group that something about God and work, or God made us for work. That was the premise of the whole study. And indeed he did. And I think when people are mentally or in their soul unhealthy, sad, depressed, anxious, all those things, if there is a place for service, just a little something they can do. And I used to have these discussions with my patients all the time. Tell me what actually makes you feel relaxed, when I used to walk my dog, that was, but I can't walk anymore, I'm too old, or whatever. So write a prescription for fostering dogs. It just, because if you can just get that little bit started, God does so much with little bits in our lives. Just like you say, if you can just get over that little hump, do something for someone or something else.
There's freedom in it.
There's freedom, there's expansion, there's breath. It's
you see that when people go on mission trips, and maybe they weren't excited about going or anything like that, they feel good about the fact that they're doing the work.
Right.
And that can kind of make them feel good. They give themselves a pat on their back. But the thing that people take away from it almost universally, it seems, is that they have a new perspective on what their life was like. Like, these people don't have bathrooms. Like, we were just building bathrooms for them. Or they have a really hard time, like if you or like helping people build wells in Africa. You just a new perspective on life, or whether it's just going to feed people that are homeless.
Right.
And like that kind of level of service can go, oh yeah, like, I mean, not to diminish the thing that I'm going through, or maybe that they're going through, but there's something,
he wants us to move outside.
Outside ourselves.
Right.
There's humility that is in there, that comes through that, and I think the freedom is the best word for that. Is I can actually keep doing this, and this is okay.
I really, my theology is probably wrong, but I believe that God is within each of us as well. That when we come to faith, that He gives, we have Him in us, and that's what Christ came to do, right? Didn't He say, I have come to serve,
and not be served,
Exactly. And so we're feeding the innermost part of us whenever we can step out in even a little bit. You're feeding that and expanding it. And I think that's the source of the freedom. It's anyway, that's my
love
theory.
that needs to be acted on.
Absolutely.
And I think too, it's like, I mean, we don't have to wrap our mind around doing something I think of VBS, monumental. Monumental in our actions. Like, even to just initiate a discussion with a friend, I feel like is so beyond so many people right now, because we do get so bogged down, and I'm sure the pandemic messed with that too. But it's just like everyone, it just feels I don't want to make sweeping claims, but it just feels so difficult and fragile to really be maybe the first one out to say, let's meet together. Like, let's do this. And there you go. That's kind of like service because you're taking time for someone else. And But...
Yeah.
You know, I also remember telling one patient I was working with that, you know, she just really can't, agoraphobia type of stuff, that the fact that because she loved beauty, she would put a flower in her window or on her porch, and how many times just that act touches somebody else that sees that flower and thinks, oh, there's beauty. You know, there is beauty in my day now because I saw that.
Yeah.
There's just, it doesn't have to be this big thing. It doesn't have to be cooking a meal or you know?
Yeah.
It's just being
Simple
open.
kindness 101. Yeah, that's very true. I know our neighbors share their dahlias with us every once in a while, and it's like, oh, you know, because we don't grow our own beautiful flowers, at least not enough to cut into a bouquet, and it's just, it is amazing. Like, brightens up a room, so.
It really does,
Yeah. Once you wash the bugs off. But they brighten up room too. They're God's creation. So, you know, and that's a whole other discussion.
There's some I can't deal with, though.
I know. I gotta let them free, and other times I say, Tyler, will you deal with this? Do what you will. I don't know. Say a prayer. What's the theology behind that, guys?
Grace and I had a conversation in the car not too long ago about how, like, she's like, we were looking at bald eagles flying, and like just how majestic and beautiful they are as animals. They just, I mean, they're my favorite bird. I mean, how can they not be?
Yeah.
It's a good bird to choose.
It's great. I mean, it's an easy choice. But she's like, did God know? She's like, he must have, but that the bald eagle was going to be so much cooler than the crow.
Like his standard.
Like, was that? Did he know that? I mean, obviously the crow has its purpose, but the eagle's so much cooler and much more majestic. And then we kind of talked about, like, what's the purpose of a mosquito?
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's a purpose of a mosquito, but I don't know. I don't want to.
Yeah, so fascinating.
It is,
like
yeah.
That. It's like a Would You Rather, but God edition. Like,
Yeah.
God, did you know?
God, did you know that the crow was going to be disgusting and, you know.
Then you need to spend time in Alaska.
Yeah.
Where eagles are scavengers.
Oh, really?
That's it.
Oh.
People are not excited about eagles because they're scavengers.
Huh.
They'll eat anything.
Like the raccoons of the sky.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
That's
like a cultural shift.
It really is. It's just, I'm with you. You know, we get so excited. They fly right over our house because they have a nest right there. And it's like, oh, they're so wonderful. And every once in a while, in the back of my head, I'll see those people in the... Yeah, but they're just scavengers.
Good perspective shift there.
Yeah.
I like that. It's nice, Mary.
Yeah.
Well, we know that there's a lot more odd jobs. So I feel like in listening to this, if anyone wants to ask you about that, is that fair game? They can say, what else? What other positions have you held?
Oh, certainly, absolutely.
Yeah.
What have I not done? Kind of.
I feel like that'd be it sounds like a great conversation starter with you and the Narthex.
Yeah. We usually, that's kind of how we sum up the podcast, as we say, you know, if somebody were to come up after church, you're pretty approachable, I'd say.
Yes.
And so, you know, want to strike up
around.
If you're, unless you're riding horses, that's true.
Or in the garden.
Or with Sunday school.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, just come up and say hello then for people.
That would be great. And you know, like Ty was saying, I love hearing people's stories. I've always, and that's why when I became a nurse practitioner, I didn't do pediatrics at all, because I like old people. Because they have more stories. I love listening to them. So that would be the thing. I would love to hear your story.
Okay.
And
I like that.
Yeah,
because then, you know, then the jokes are timed well, and like I'm still getting to a point where I need to figure out, like, even when people ask, oh, how'd you and Tyler meet, or, you know, it's like, oh, you got to find the punchline, you got to find the narrative arc, and so, but you're so right, you know, you talk to somebody with life experience, and it's just well polished, or not, which is hilarious too. So
absolutely. And I think, and the older you get, the more story oriented you become.
Hmm.
It's
That's
just
nice.
like
It is interesting.
it is an arc.
Yeah, totally,
You're
yeah.
going back
This
to
hidden gift that's like
Yeah.
polished as you age. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
There's so many good things there.
it is.
It's gonna be. I'm gonna be percolating on it all day. So
excellent.
yeah.
Good.
Well, thank you, Mary.
You
Yeah.
betcha. Thank you.